Alright, hey folks, welcome to another lecture in the Spark series. This is lecture 8. So far if you are following my lectures, the particular lectures, lecture 4 and lecture 5, which are dedicated to writing a whatcon program when text file is read using, Sparks RTD and Sparks DF. At the end of that particular lectures, I gave a challenge for the viewers. So I'm not sure whether you have tried those challenges or not, or even I'm not sure that even if you have watched that particular lectures. So let's take a moment and answer those particular challenges from lecture 4 and lecture 5 in this particular lecture. So the agenda for today's lecture is answer those challenges. So for that, let me shift into my database workspace. Okay. Yeah, well, here I'm at my database workspace community edition. Let's start the lecture by briefing about the challenge. Yeah, well, we have seen from the lecture 4 and lecture 5 that if you have an integer in the text file, the program that we have wrote treats those integers are also strings, and respective frequencies are also written for that strings, for that integers. So with that back in our mind, the first part of the challenge goes as try to remove those integer parts from the text file that we have deliberately added. So the first part of the challenge is try to write your own program or use some inbuilt functions so that those integers from the text file can be removed. Not from the text file, but more clearly that not from the text file, but from the results that we are going to get. And the second part of challenge is try to define your own functions instead of using inbuilt functions. In the lectures, let me specify that in lecture 4, which is when text file is read using RDD, we just used map, flat map, and reduce by key functions which are not key functions which are inbuilt. And again in lecture 4, lecture 5, when text file is read using data frame, Sparks data frame, we just used inbuilt functions like split and explode, and also aggregate functions like count, and these are the functions, inbuilt functions that we have used uh, in lecture 4 and lecture 5. So the second part of challenge as goes as try to build your own functions so that we just can ignore these inbuilt functions. Instead of using inbuilt functions, try to build your own functions and try to use them. So yeah, with that saying, let's answer those particular challenges. Well, I'm just using the same text file that I have used for lecture 4 and lecture 5. Okay, I am using data frame to read our text file. So let's print our text file. Yeah, here is our text file which is read as a data frame. And again, if you read a text file using Sparks data frame, then it reads the data frame as uh, a table with rows and column. A single row. By default it names it as value, and each row of the table or each line from the text file. So let's get into the first part of the challenge, which is remove the integer part from the results. So for that, I'm going to follow a simple steps. So which are, let's in that step one, let's verify that whether the text file contain integer parts or not, I mean integers or not. And the second step is try to define your own functions. I'm using a UDF, which is a user defined function. If you are working with Spark, you can use UDF to define your own functions. If you have don't have any knowledge about UDF or have a very little knowledge about UDF, you can watch my past lecture, which is lecture 7, which is dedicated to UDF. You can watch that lecture. And again, if you have not watched the particular lectures that are lecture 4 and lecture 5, I will advise you to watch. Take your time and go on watch those lectures, because it will make this particular lecture simple and easy to understand. Yeah, with that, let's jump into the step 3, which is using the function that we have defined from the step 2. So let's implement the step 1, which is let's verify whether we have integers or not. So for that, let's use a split function on a value column so that we can split the sentence into a list of strings. So yeah, well, I'm using the split function with delimiter as space on the column words. I mean on the df, which is on the data frame with the column value. So let's use that and print the result after using split function. So here is our result from after using split function, which has created a new column using, I mean, title as words. Uh, Again, it's simple to understand about with column, but if you have not if you are not aware of using with column, again you can watch my playlist where I have a dedicated lecture for the with column function. So using with column and split function, I just created a new column which is a list of strings from a sentence. So let's use an explode function on the column words so that we can convert this list of strings into each particular string. So yeah, I'm just using function explode on the column words of data frame df, and storing that results in the new column as word. Let's print that. So here is our data frame after using explode function on the column words, and here is our new column word, which is, and the items of the column word are each string. So yeah, well, let's use drop function to drop those two columns which are not much useful, which are value and words. These two columns are not much useful for the following steps, so let's drop those and let's store it in the variable actual df, and let's print the actual df. Here is our actual df, which only contain one simple column and the data type is as string. So let's use group by function on the column word and aggregate using the count function on column word and store it as frequency. So with that using, we'll get a new column which specify the frequencies of each word. I mean, if you don't have a idea about what does it mean, you can watch the lecture 4, I mean lecture 5, and we'll get a good understanding about what we have done here using group by or aggregate and alias. And we just use sort function in order to sort our results, and we stored that results in the variable without removing, and without removing is data frame is as follows. So we can see that our data frame contain a single string, I mean a stringle integer which is treated as string, which is 50, and the frequency is also 1. So it is hence it is verified that our text file contain a string value. So let's jump into the step 2, which is defining our own function. So I just defining a simple function using UDF, Sparks UDF. So yeah, well, I have named it as remove, and it takes integer, I mean strings as an input. So uh, what does this function do is it will subject each item from the column word and uses int function on each item, I mean each item from the column word. So I mean if you use int function on any integer which is treated as string, it gives true. I mean let's verify that. I mean if you use type on int function on any integer which is treated as string, then it gives true. But if you use the same on actual string, like any string like apple, then it gives a value error. Yeah, and that is the very reason that we are using try and expect, I mean except method. In the try, we just use a simple if function. That means if int of that particular string is true, that means we have encountered an actual integer. So in that case, let's just pass, means it passes a null value. And if that is not the case, then it definitely gives a value error. So we just used accept a value error method, and in that particular case just return the string. We just did nothing. We have just checked whether the int function on the particular string is true or not. If that is true, then we have encountered that actual string, I mean actual integer, and in that cases we just pass a null value. In another case, I mean if that int function on a string is false, then it means we have encountered an actual string, and in that cases we just returns the string. So this is our function, and we'll just use uh, that function on the column word, and named it as and name the new column as refined words. And so we just store the resulted data frame under the name df under removing, and let's print the results. Yeah, here is our result. So after using our remove function on the word column, we just see, we can see that that integer part is treated as null, I mean returned as null, and all other as normal as they are. So yes, after converting that actual string actual integers into a null value, we can just use a filter function so that we can filter our results to ignore the null values. So let's use a filter function on the data frame df dot under removing. We just created that, and filter function takes a particular I mean we can say it as operation or expression, and the expression is we are specifying the specific column which is refined words from the df dot under removing, and the returns not null values. So the filter function only returns uh, the items which are not null. And so let's, and I stored that in the variable with removing. So let's print that results. Yeah, well, we can see that we just eliminated that integer part using our own function and also using filter function. Well, I mean we just answered our first part of the challenge, but let's observe one thing, that this particular row, which is row 1, which has a frequency of 13, but it's not character, it's not actual string, it's not actual integer, it's nothing. I mean it's just actually a space. from the text file. So let's remove that as well. So for that I'll just use an inbuilt where function. Where function takes an expression, and the expression that I have used is we are just subjecting a specific column which is df dot with removing refined words, and returns not space values. So yeah, after using where function, let's print our df, I mean final df. Here is our result. We just ignored that integer and as well as the not space also. So with that, our first part of the challenge is finished. So let's get into the second part of the challenge, which is defining your own functions instead of building inbuilt function, I mean using inbuilt functions. So for that, uh, I will say, perhaps I will say that I can ignore the second part of the challenge. So the very reason that I am saying it is because it's unlike Python, where we can define your own functions, so that we can have a optimized functions. Spark was built using distributed framework and works on parallel processing, so which is a kind of optimized internally. So building a user defined function which replicates the same functioning of inbuilt function is just a waste of time, I suppose, in some sense. And it's better to use inbuilt functions. But if you're interested and want to try the challenge, you can go ahead and try to build your own functions with the knowledge of UDF. So yeah, with that saying, this is the end of the lecture. So yeah, we'll meet in the next lecture as well.